An unseen black dark ring. The eerie ability that gradually becomes stronger. Should we help Ultraman fight monsters? Or helping monsters fight Ultraman and plunging the world into darkness? Transforming into a biased text, single. Do not enter if you do not like it. Keywords of the novel. Ultraman's Dark Star Pattern. No pop-ups. Ultraman's Dark Star Pattern Complete Collection download. Ultraman's Dark Star Pattern Latest Chapter Reading. Chapter 1. Yin Chenghongling. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 1. Yin Chenghongling. It's night. Phew, a meteorite tore through the atmosphere and fell rapidly to the ground. Due to its speed, its surface was already covered with flames. The meteorite finally hit a mountain forest with a loud bang, leaving a large crater. When the meteorite passed through the atmosphere, the Victory Team led by the TPC Peace Alliance on Earth, led by the captain of the Victory Team, Jiuliang, had already sent people to search for the meteorite. The TPC Victory Team is composed of 7 members and is an international organization whose primary task is to investigate abnormal phenomena on Earth. At this moment, all 7 people arrived and sat in their respective seats, all staring at the meteorite placed on the table. Is this the meteorite? One of the men suddenly spoke up, his eyes constantly scrutinizing the meteorite. This person was none other than Xincheng. It seems like there's something inside, Lena said with some uncertainty as she looked at the meteorite. At this moment, a woman wearing white clothes who looked like a doctor walked over, holding a cutting machine in her hand, and began dissecting the meteorite on the table. It wasn't until the contents inside were completely exposed to everyone that they could see clearly what was being wrapped here, a silver-white conical object. Pada. At this moment, the lights in the entire command room suddenly dimmed, and with it came the sparkling cone-shaped object in front of everyone. Quickly, a white figure was projected from mid-air. Everyone looked at the projected figure with strange eyes. She seems to be saying something. And Horai noticed that the projected mouth seemed to be constantly moving, opening and closing as if saying something more. In no time, Horai dug up a language translation machine and received the sound waves emitted by the projected human figure. Under a burst of operation by Yi Rui, the sound waves were translated out in no time. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Yu Lian, the captain of the Earth Security Force. The arrival of this time machine on Earth means that many great changes will occur one after another. The initial signs are the monster Golzon, which shook the Earth, and the monster Melba, which caused the sky to shatter, resurrected. Monster Gorzon, the monster that appears in Mongolia is Gorzon. Upon hearing these words, Dagu one on the side immediately looked at the team members sitting there, his expression somewhat excited. The only one who can protect the Earth from the disaster of mutation is the giant inside the pyramid. The giant was once the Earth's guardian god, and he hid his body used for combat in the huge pyramid. He then restored it to its original form of light and returned to his hometown. My descendants, your current task is to revive the giant, defeat the monsters Gorzon and Melba. The only way to revive the giant is to. When Yulian said this, she suddenly stopped, and the projection of the time machine also disappeared, and Yulian also disappeared from sight. The lights in the command room also lit up again at the same time. Everyone looked at each other in confusion, and then intermediary Hui looked at the woman who looked like a doctor and said, Dr. Jinsuan, what do you think? This time machine is modeled after comets in the solar system, which seems too outrageous. Dr. Kinmura pulled off his gloves and shook his head. Dagu, who was listening on the side, approached and argued, this is true. She said the monster Golzon will appear, isn't she right? That's not necessarily the monster Golzon. At this moment, the deputy captain of the Zhongfang hugged his arms, obviously not believing what Yulian and Dagu said. Melba will also appear, Dagu quickly refuted the deputy captain of the sect. Dagu team member, if you believe in this time machine, it means you acknowledge that there used to be better scientific civilizations than us in the past. Dr. Jiansuan told Dagu that she didn't really believe there was a civilization in the past that was more advanced than their current science. Seeing that everyone didn't believe him, Big Gudon was speechless and unable to refute. However, after Dr. Jiansuan tested the radioactive elements in the meteorite covering the outer layer of the time machine, his thoughts changed. This time machine was actually a product of 30 million years ago, which immediately surprised everyone in the command room. Oh my goodness. Lena looked even more incredulous. Dee. At this moment, the alarm suddenly sounded. A monster has appeared on Istanbul Island, and the image captured by the satellite is now being transmitted. A man's image appeared on the monitor, and after the other person finished speaking, the screen automatically switched to the monster image he mentioned. A huge monster appeared on the screen, with wings behind it, a cone-shaped head, and a pointed beak resembling an eagle. Everyone looked at the monster on the screen in shock. It's Melba. The monster that shattered the sky, Melba. Dagu looked excited. What Jiuliang said is all true. The monster Golzon that shook the earth and the monster Melba that shattered the sky have appeared, leaving only the giants inside the pyramid. Dagu looked around the team members with an undeniable and resolute tone. The giant inside the pyramid, where is the pyramid? Zhu Jianhui looked at Dagu. If you can find the pyramid, you can find it right away. Yi Rui quickly began to operate on the console. Are you in Japan? Several people looked at the satellite image played on the big screen together. After obtaining the approximate location of the pyramid, Zhu Jianhui dispatched the deputy captain of the Zhongfang, Xincheng, Lina, Dagu, and Horai, driving 2 flying swallows. The next day. Special news. Just now, a giant monster about 50 meters tall appeared in the northeast of Akita City. It has destroyed many residential buildings and is currently moving northeast. According to the TPC World Peace Joint Organization, monster also appeared in Mongolia this morning. An investigation is currently underway to determine whether this monster is the same as Akita's. Within a certain city. Yin Chenghongling quietly watched the footage playing on the roadside screen, then listened to the news from the host and murmured, Monster Golzon. It's been 19 years, has it finally appeared? Then he ignored the panicked crowd around him and turned around to leave. But what no one noticed was that as Yin Chenghongling walked into an empty alley, she gently raised her arm and immediately saw a dark red circular 6-pointed star pattern in front of her, and Hongling disappeared completely. Strangely enough, after passing through the 6-pointed star pattern, Hongling disappeared into this small alley, looking as if she had crossed space and entered the door of time and space. P.S. There are no so-called golden 3 chapters, the cute new author only has 3 chapters about pulling the hips, end of this chapter. Chapter 2. Second Time Travelers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Second Time Travelers in a certain mountain range. Golzon and Melba arrived at the location of the pyramid discovered by TPC almost simultaneously. Roar. Golzon's huge soles made a deafening sound as he stepped on the ground. With a roar, Golzon stopped not far from the pyramid. Immediately, a purple light flickered above Golzon's head. With a sizzle sound, a purple beam of light shot towards the top of the pyramid. And then the pyramid turned into tiny light particles that drifted away. When Golzon retrieved the purple light, in front of it were 3 huge stone statues standing in place. Is this a giant? Zhu Jianhui, who was far away in the command room, saw this scene from the perspective of Zhongfang, Lina and others. Teng stood up from his seat with a loud voice, his heart full of shock. The intermediary Huidu, located far away at the Far East headquarters, is like this, not to mention the 4 people present in the new city, Rina Hori. Although they have seen it up close with their own eyes once, they can't help but feel the shock in their hearts at this moment and cannot speak. Ha! A piercing cry came from the eardrums, and a massive figure fell from the sky. Melba stood on the other side of Golzon. Gorzin ignored Melba on one side, but looked at the three giant stone statues in front of him. A ray of hatred flashed in his eyes, and he let out a fierce growl. He then stepped forward and slapped one of the giant stone statues with his paw. Bang! The stone statue shattered in response, and its shoulder was instantly shattered by a paw from Gorzin, causing its head to fall to the ground. Roar! Gorzin was like venting his emotions, stomping on the head with one foot and letting out a roar. Haha! Melba did not show weakness either. With his wings spread out behind him, he charged straight towards a stone statue, pecking at a giant statue with his sharp mouth. Then, two rays burst out from his eyes, instantly blasting the body of the headless giant. Melba let out a fierce roar towards the sky, as if he was delighted to have destroyed a giant statue. The four people in the new city were already gritting their teeth, watching the giant stone statue being brutally destroyed by two monsters, which made them very angry. However, Dagu was not by their side, and none of the four of them noticed this. In the end, the two monsters shattered the two giant stone statues and looked at the last remaining giant stone statue together. Gorzin let out a low roar and stepped forward, grabbing the shoulders of the giant statue with both claws, pulling it to the ground. Bang! A huge muffled sound sounded, and smoke and dust spread everywhere. However, this time the stone statue was not as fragile as the other two statues, and was not damaged. Upon seeing this, Melba couldn't help but let out a scream. Unexpectedly, Gorzin was unable to successfully destroy the statue and had to come forward to repair the knife himself. Stop it! At this moment, Dagu flew over with the Fian, pressed the button to eject the smoke bomb, and hit Gorzin's chest. When Zhongfang and others who were watching from a distance saw this scene, they all reacted. Dagu took action without authorization and quickly shouted into the walkie-talkie, "Dagu, it's useless. Come back quickly. And this time, Gorzin will not be scared by this smoke bomb again." The last time, it thought it was something powerful, so it ran away. Unexpectedly, this time Dagu used this move and directly slapped the approaching Fian. However, Dagu still managed to avoid Gorzin's claws. Melba, who was about to destroy the last giant statue, suddenly lifted his head without warning, and two yellow lights burst out of his eyes, instantly hitting the tail of the Fian. Dagu! Dagu, jump out! The voices of Zhongfang and his companions came from Dagu's walkie-talkie, but Dagu repeatedly pulled the parachute device, but it didn't work at all. And on another mountain peak. Suddenly, a circular dark red six-pointed star pattern appeared, and a figure emerged from it. Yin Chenghongling walked out of the star pattern and her body couldn't help but stumble. Is energy consumption excessive? Hongling covered her chest with one hand and supported a tree with the other. A sense of powerlessness came from her body, and the distance from the city to the pyramid was a bit far. Her energy consumption was a bit excessive. Taking a deep breath, her gaze immediately turned to the two huge monsters in the distance. At the moment she saw these two monsters with her own eyes, Hongling couldn't help but feel a bit lost in thought. I didn't expect that she really came to the world of Diga Ultraman. Speaking of which, this was already her second time traveling. Originally, she was just a diligent and ordinary office worker. During the time she returned home from work, a dark mist fell from the sky, falling straight on her head and causing her to lose consciousness. When she woke up again, she had already appeared on Earth in another world, and she had transformed from him to her, crossing over into a girl with her parents dead. At first, Hongling thought she had just traveled to a parallel world, because the similarity between this Earth and the Earth she was originally on was almost 99%. The difference was that the Earth in this world was very popular, and people loved watching Ultraman's movies and TV shows. Under the influence of her surroundings, Hongling also learned about some Ultramen. Before traveling, she had only seen Diga and the Galactic Ultramen. Now, although she doesn't know all Ultramen, she still knows most of the Ultraman names, although she hasn't read them much. When she finally adapted to the life in that world, A year passed peacefully, and the whole world suddenly underwent tremendous changes. Her city suddenly began to sink and collapse underground. Immediately, she saw a ferocious and huge monster crawling out of it, and with it came the calamity of the city. And it was during that monster rampage that Hongling made her second journey and arrived in the world of the current Dagu Ultraman. Originally, Hongling thought it was just a parallel world, but she didn't expect to accidentally see TPC, an international organization, appear on television, which made her understand what kind of world she had entered. It has been 19 years since I came to the world of Ultraman, and when I first wore it, I was just a 5-year-old nanny. When she was 12 years old, both of her parents died in a car accident. It is unknown whether she had taken the life of her parents and left a house and some money in the bank for safekeeping until she reached adulthood. After regaining her senses, Hongling's attention returned to the scene. As expected, Dagu turned into light and flew into the timer of the statue of Dijia at the critical moment, just like in the original work. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Melba card. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Melba card. Watching the fierce battle among the three behemoths, Hongling held onto a tree and had not yet recovered. As the minutes and seconds passed, the timer on Diga's chest began to flash. The powerful red Diga was about to knock down Gorzon, but he didn't expect Melba to hover in the sky for a while before diving fiercely towards Diga, interrupting his attack on Gorzon. Upon being ambushed by Melba, Gorzon also knew that he was not a match for Diga. He took the opportunity to dig up the ground, sneak into the ground, and slip away. When Dijia turned around, Gorzon only had one tail left in sight. Seeing that Gorzon's escape was inevitable, Dijia looked directly at Melba hovering above. It has to be said that Diga's remaining combat instincts are very strong. A light flashed over his head, and soon Diga turned into a purple agile type. He kicked Melba fiercely and shot him down directly. Before Melba, who had been shot down, could move, Diga had already used the Lampard light bullet to shoot towards Melba, and the hit Melba's entire massive body exploded. At this moment, Red Ling, who had been watching the battle from afar, raised her right hand towards Melba's position, holding a black circular ring in her hand. Then, without anyone paying attention, Melba's scattered body fragments turned into black particles, which were absorbed into the black ring in Hongling's hand. Finally, these particles slowly formed a grey card, with Red Ling's index and middle fingers gripping the card and silently scrutinizing it. The card is not very big as a playing card, with a half-body image of Melba displayed on it, and a text in the lower left corner. Super ancient monster Melba. Hongling's actions were not even noticed by Zhu Jianhui, who was far away from the headquarters. Even Lina and others present, as well as Dagu who had become Dijia, were not aware of them. Seeing two monsters die and flee, Dagu, who had transformed into Diga, was also preparing to fly into the sky. His timer was already flashing non-stop. I don't know if the ring can turn Ultraman into a card, said Hongling as she looked at Diga, who had already raised her hands and was about to take off. Suddenly, such a thought came to her mind. Before Red Ling could decide whether to release Melba, Diga had already flown into the sky and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Disappeared. And the Horai and others, who had been watching the battle, sat in the Fian and their eyes kept moving along with Dijia's movements until Dijia disappeared into the sky. Horai still stared wide at the sky. Seeing this, Hongling no longer had to think about whether to release the newly obtained Melba card. Fortunately, consuming so much energy this time is not in vain, and getting a Melba card is not at a disadvantage. The purpose of coming this time was originally just to get a Melba card. After feeling that her body had also regained some physical strength, she tidied up her clothes a little and turned around, walking out of the area covered by the big tree. The few people sitting on the Fian also came to their senses and planned to return to the Far East base headquarters, but only Lina remained in a sad daze. Dagu. Lina felt very uncomfortable in her heart. Upon hearing Lina's words, the three of Xinqiang fell silent. Let's go back to headquarters first. In the end, the deputy captain of Zhongfang spoke up without losing his composure. Hello. I'm here. On the ground, Dagu suddenly appeared, wielding his helmet and waving his hand vigorously towards the Fian in the sky. That's Dagu. Look. Horai suddenly looked down and exclaimed in surprise. You stinky kid, we're in such a hurry. After getting off the plane and meeting with Dagu, Horai immediately stepped forward and grabbed Dagu. Hate. Lina patted Dagu with both hands, but her heart was filled with joy. You're lucky. Zhongfang glared fiercely at Dagu before ordering, let's go back. Yes. The four of Dagu responded one after another, but just as Dagu turned around, he accidentally saw the back of Hongling, who was about to leave on a rockery in the distance. That's it. Dagu suddenly stopped. What's wrong? Seeing Dagu suddenly stop, Zhongfang looked at him with a puzzled gaze. Without waiting for Dagu to answer, several members of the sect followed Dagu's gaze. That's alone, right? Said Horai with suspicion. No, how could anyone appear here in this wilderness? Go and see. Zhongfang immediately took action and chased after him first. But before Dagu and his companions could react, the sect had already caught up and had no choice but to quickly follow in their footsteps. But Hongling had not yet noticed that she had been accidentally discovered by Dagu and was slowly looking for a way out. In no time, he was stopped by the Zhongfang and the Big Four. Stop, who are you? How did you appear here? Zhongfang pointed a pistol at Hongling with a cautious expression on his face. This sudden incident, where she was even pointed at by a handgun, made Hongling instinctively take a step back. It was the first time someone had pointed a gun at her after living for so long. And when the five of them saw clearly what Hongling looked like, they were all a bit stunned. She was a woman. After looking at Hongling for a while and seeing that she didn't seem to pose a threat to them, Zhongfang put away his pistol and said, "What is this lady here for?" Seeing that Hongling was not very aggressive, the leading attitude of the Zhongfang gradually became more friendly. Hongling didn't expect to be discovered by the victory team even when she was standing so far away. How can we explain this? Did she get lost and walk to this place in a daze? The victorious team is not an idiot, can they believe it? Seeing that Hongling had not responded for a long time, Zhongfang thought it was his previous behavior that scared the other party. Just as he was about to ask again, Lina walked out from behind him. Deputy Commander, let me do it, Lina whispered to Zhongfang, saying that it would be more appropriate for her to inquire. After all, the deputy captain of Zhongfang's face is indeed not very friendly. Yazi. Lina walked up to Hongling, blinked her eyes, and asked with a smile, "Miss, may I ask why you appeared in this place? What are you planning to do here?" "I'm just walking around, aren't you all here too? Why can't you be here?" Hongling said with Tai Chi. Although the purpose of coming here is not pure, they did not notice what they had done, and Hongling was not worried about what the victory team would do to her. After all, the victory team still follows the rules. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Merba's Dark Materialization. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Merba's Dark Materialization. Looking at the back of Dagu and the others leaving, Hongling chose a direction and turned around to leave. Lina team member, is that person really okay? Why do I feel something's wrong? On the Fian, Horai sat behind Lina and suddenly said. There shouldn't be any problem. Lina glanced at Dagu next to her. Dagu, what's wrong with you? Zhongfang shouted twice in a row, and Dagu finally regained his senses. Deputy Commander, what's wrong? Dagu looked at Zhongfang in confusion. Look at you daydreaming for half a day, what are you thinking? Dagu fell silent for a moment, unable to explain to Zhongfang. After all, he had recently turned into a giant, and he vaguely felt that the person he had just met was not as simple as it appeared. This was his intuition after becoming a giant. On a quiet path. Red Ling stood by a small stream, silently looking at her reflection below. Do I have to spend the night in this place where birds don't poop tonight? As the sky was about to turn dark, Hongling looked around awkwardly. Yes, she got lost. She had no idea where this place was. She came here not long ago only because she sensed Gorzon and Melba, so she could accurately transfer through space. Now her energy expenditure has not recovered enough to allow her to perform another long-distance spatial transfer. Looking at the almost completely pitch-black sky, and then looking around, Hongling couldn't help but shiver. This wilderness looks strange and creepy. Although she has been human for 3 lifetimes, she has always been in a peaceful world and is still a bit afraid of the dark. Moreover, the world I traveled through for the first time only lasted for a year, without experiencing any major storms. Of course, when she was ultimately killed by the monster, she had no consciousness and didn't even know how to die. After the dazzling light, there was a violent explosion, and she lost consciousness. There's no other way, give this thing a try. At this moment, Hongling thought of the Melba card she just got today. Taking out the black ring that had been hanging from her waist, Red Ling's mind moved and Melba's card appeared in front of her, emitting a faint dark light. As for why she knew the purpose of the black ring, she didn't know it at first. When she noticed the black ring, a message came to her mind from within it. The purpose and how to use these were all conveyed to her mind by the black circle. And it's interesting how this black ring, Red Ling, was obtained. When she had just crossed this world 7 years ago, when her parents passed away, the black ring appeared by her side. And the powerful ability of spatial transfer was also acquired at that time, and it was not just a spatial transfer ability. Since then, Hongling's physical strength has been too ordinary. Although there are no combat skills to speak of, it is impossible to defeat 100 with one enemy, but there is still no problem with defeating 10 with one enemy. And these abilities seem to be waiting for the death of her parents in this lifetime, and after their death, they all begin to awaken. And this time, due to the distance from the city to the deep mountains and forests being a bit far away, Hongling was also the first time, so she consumed too much. It took 2 hours but still hasn't recovered, so she decided to use the black ring. Gently gripping Melba's card with her fingers, the other hand raised the black ring, and Hongling inserted the card into the ring. Super Ancient Monster Melba. Dark Entity. At the moment when Hongling placed the card into the ring, a resounding and profound voice sounded, full of majesty. At the moment when Hongling heard it, her hands couldn't help but tremble. Buzzing, immediately, the card transformed into a dazzling dark purple light within the ring, and Hongling raised her hand and aimed the ring at an open space. Ha! After a flicker of light, Melba's figure appeared in the nearby open space, accompanied by Melba's cries. At the moment Melba stepped on the ground with both feet, the entire ground shook like an earthquake, emitting a heavy muffled sound. Hongling looked up at the huge object in front of her. Although she had seen it before, it was a long-distance viewing, but now it is a close-up viewing, giving a different sense of shock. Looking at Melba's terrifying head and crimson eyes, although I knew that the current Melba was under my control, I couldn't help but feel a little scared. Especially now that it's completely dark, Melba's crimson eyes look particularly frightening. Not to mention that Hongling is timid, if someone were to be stared at by such a pair of crimson eyes in the dark, they would feel hairy, even worse than her Hongling. After trying to calm down her heart for a while, Hongling quietly looked at Merba in front of her without making any sound. It was only then that she realized that there were many differences between the current Merba and the original Merba. With such a close distance, Hongling could still see clearly the appearance of Merba in front of her. I saw that Melba's wings, which were originally as thin as cicada wings, have now become even thicker, and its 2 claws have become 5-fingered palms, with hard objects like thorns on the back of the hand. Finally, it is its chest, which has many dark red stripes that vaguely cover the entire upper body of Melba. Don't mention it, Melba's current appearance is even more beautiful than the original one. With a thought in her heart, Hongling lowered her head without warning and slowly placed a palm in front of her. Hongling didn't procrastinate either, she lightly jumped onto Melba's huge palm. When Red Ling fully stood up, Melba straightened her body and let out a low cry. Her wings spread out behind her and she immediately flew into the sky. At the same time, within the Far East headquarters base, the alarm in the command room suddenly sounded. What happened? All the members of the victory team were present, and the person sitting in the main seat, Zhu Hui, asked Yi Rui, who was sitting in front of the control table. A monster has appeared in a mountain range in the northeast, and now the image captured by the satellite has been dropped. Yi Rui quickly tapped on the control panel, and then a picture switched to the main screen. The place where the monster appeared is near the original pyramid, Yi Rui exclaimed in surprise. Before everyone could speak, Melba's terrifying body appeared on the big screen. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Victory Team Stupid. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Victory Team Stupid. This is Melba. Why is there still one? Isn't it more than just one Melba? They are still of the same race. Although it is already nighttime, the images captured by the satellite are still relatively clear. They can confirm that this is undoubtedly the Merba, but the current Merba is different from the daytime one. They are not sure if this is the daytime one. Horai looked at the picture displayed on the big screen with a surprised expression, completely incredulous. Zhongfang and Dagu suddenly stood up from their seats and stared fixedly at the monster Melba on the big screen. How could that be? Zhongfang couldn't believe it either. He had witnessed Melba being beaten to pieces by a giant with his own eyes, and now he saw a Melba alive, which he couldn't accept. Is this what Yu Lian referred to as the Great Change? It's not just about two monsters, Gorzon and Melba, but more. Dagu murmured to himself, thinking of what Yu Lian had said before, and couldn't help but think of it. Everyone also heard Dagu's words and fell silent for a moment. However, now is not the time to silence them, because the Melba on the big screen suddenly moved and flew high into the sky, heading towards a city at high speed. Yi Rui tapped on the control panel and quickly spoke up, this Melba is moving at high speed. At its current speed, it won't be long before it passes through a city. Speaking of Hongling's side, she didn't know that she had summoned Melba, which alarmed the entire victory team. She is now standing in Melba's palm. Melba did not close her palms, so Hongling could also see the scenery in the sky, while her body was covered with a thin energy shield, blocking the wind from outside. Hongling just randomly chose a direction, intending to have Melba take her to a city and then inquire about her city. She had no idea where her city was located. On the side of the victorious team. As Merba was about to approach a populous city, Zhu Jiehui quickly ordered, Deputy Captain Zhongfang and new city team members, you two are driving Fian 1. Dagu team member and Lina team member are driving Fian 2 and will immediately depart. But Captain, our current equipment cannot cause any damage to monsters at all, New City quickly reminded Intermediary Hui. Their victory team's current equipment is not a match for monsters at all, and taking the risk to go is just a meaningless way to die. The monster stopped over the city. However, before Intermediary Hui could say anything more, Yi Rui, who had been paying attention to Melba, suddenly spoke up. But as soon as he finished speaking, Yi Rui quickly shouted, no, Melba disappeared over the city, out of thin air. Everyone looked at each other, unsure for a moment if they needed to move out. However, Zhu Jianhui did not lose his composure as a result and quickly ordered Yi Rui, concentrate satellite scanning. If it cannot be scanned, expand the range of scanning. Understood. Zhongfang, however, had a serious expression on his face and said, how could Melba suddenly disappear without a trace? Such a large figure has disappeared like this. However, no one was able to answer this question because Melba was flying at high speed sideways, with one hand resting on her chest, blocking the satellite from shooting from top to bottom. Therefore, They did not realize that besides Melba, there was actually another person like Hongling. On Hongling's side, after reaching the sky over a city, she once again transformed Merba into a card and put it away. Then the whole person fell into an empty alley. Although the energy had not fully recovered, it was not a problem to fall from that high altitude to the ground. After walking out of the alley, Hongling found a passerby on the roadside and asked about the location of her city. She then quickly found a hotel and planned to stay here for one night. If it weren't for being too hasty when she came out and not bringing her phone, she wouldn't have gotten lost. Now that she knows where it is, Hongling wouldn't be in a hurry to go back. This city is still a bit far from the city where her home is located, so she is too lazy to take a car back. It's better to take a night off and wait for energy to fully recover before finally transferring space. Speaking of TPC headquarters. After expanding the scope of Yerue's search, there was still no trace of Melba scanned, and in the end, he reluctantly gave up his plan to find Melba. There was nothing to say overnight. On the second day, after realizing that the TPC's armed forces were too weak, Captain Yashiteru applied to Director Zay for an armed requirement for the victory team. And soon received notification of the application being approved, followed by a series of armed upgrades to the Fian and its armaments. Everyone is actively arming themselves with guns, but only Dagu appears to have a heavy heart. He still didn't fully accept the fact that he had become a giant, and then he flipped through the image of the Melba that appeared last night. Dagu always felt that this Melba was the one he had killed. Although there had been some changes in Melba's appearance, Dagu had an intuition that it was the one he had killed. However, Dagu cannot be completely certain. After all, he dare not say that his intuition is accurate. During this period, Dagu was suddenly informed by Jiuliang that he was both light and human. Red Ling, who woke up from her daze, squinted her eyes and washed up. After leaving the hotel, she directly used her spatial transfer ability and returned home. But what Hongling didn't know was that while she was using her space transfer ability, the TPC victory team at the Far East headquarters caught this abnormal energy reaction. There was an abnormal energy reaction in *** city, it disappeared, and the abnormal energy reaction appeared in *** city. Yerue immediately noticed this abnormal reaction and even called out the city with the abnormal energy reaction and threw it on the big screen. *** city. Isn't that the city where Melba disappeared last night? Is it that Melba has reappeared? Captain Zhu Jianhui looked at the big screen and then turned to Yerue's side. It was the city where Melba appeared last night, but not the monster Melba. This abnormal energy response is much weaker than Melba's energy response. Upon hearing that it was not Melba's appearance, Zhu Jianhui couldn't help but relax. As long as it was not a monster's appearance, TPC was able to handle other abnormal phenomena without any problem. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Jiuliang Island, Seeking Recommendation Tickets. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Jiuliang Island, Seeking Recommendation Tickets. It has been several days since she returned home, and Hongling's attention occasionally shifts to the TV. However, she remembers that two monsters would appear on some island. After tasting the power of Melba cards, Hongling couldn't help but want more of these monster cards. After TPC couldn't find the abnormal energy response that suddenly appeared and disappeared a few days ago, they had to reluctantly give up the search. Red Ling was on her balcony, gazing out at the entire city. She immediately closed her eyes and sensed the energy fluctuations of the two monsters. However, after sensing for a long time, she did not notice anything. I remember those two monsters seemed to be called Gakuma. Was it because they were a bit far away that they couldn't feel it? Hongling guessed. After all, there was no energy fluctuation emitted during the monster's sleep, and it was normal for her not to feel it. It is also possible that Gakuma is different from Gorzon and Melba, so it cannot be sensed. Finally, unable to feel it, Hongling had to turn around and get off the balcony. And the headquarters of the victorious team. After several days, Horai and others finally modified the Fian, upgrading its functions completely. Even the small pistol they wore was modified into a brand new Hypa pistol, which has great power. Standing under the Fian aircraft, Horai couldn't help but exclaim with emotion, "We have finally completed the modification. Now we won't be helpless when dealing with monsters. Alright, let's not lament there anymore. Go up and see what else the Fian has to offer." Standing on the side, Xinqiang patted the shoulder of Huijing and called out to him. Horai smirked and quickly the two of them went inside the Fian to investigate. There's actually nothing to check, it's just a routine inspection to prevent any unexpected situations during the actual combat of the Fian. At Hongling's home, Red Ling sat on the sofa, with half-eaten apples on the table in front of her. She took out Melba's card and rubbed it for a moment, silently examining it. Then she took out another card, with two cards sandwiched between her fingertips. Red Ling compared them and saw that Melba's card was gray, while the front showed her appearance not long ago. Her body color, streamlined dark purple stripes, and upper body color were all incredibly bright. The back color of the other card is dark red. Looking at the appearance inside this card again, it appears gray, just like the gray color when the characters in the game have not yet been unlocked. And inside this card, there is nothing unexpected, it is also a monster, but different from the fleshy monster of Melba, its appearance gives people a steel-like hardness. And the monster name in this card is what Red Ling cares most about. Civilization Ruler Galatrin. Just a few words gave Hongling a heart-shaking feeling. These words seem to have an indescribable magic that would make you involuntarily intimidated by these 9 words at first glance. This card was owned by Hongling from the moment she received the black ring, and the card remained in this gray state from beginning to end. Hongling had also tried to put this card into the ring, but nothing happened. The card seemed to be in a frozen state and could not be used. There have been many speculations about this card, and the most likely one is that Galatrin's card is too powerful, which means her current energy is not enough to materialize this card. The next day, TPC headquarters has just received a message that a few miners on Jiuliang Island will inexplicably disappear after a period of time. However, since there were only 1 or 2 people who had gone missing before, there was no reporting, and this time it was different. The miners went missing again and again in the cave. So the situation finally couldn't be suppressed, and the miners all joined forces to report to TPC without telling the director. Because of this abnormal situation of missing living people, they had to let the TPC joint organization responsible for this situation solve it. The person who came was not any of the 7 members of the victory team, but another department of TPC. "Hello Captain, how is the situation inside?" Outside the mine, TPC personnel who came to investigate the situation set up several tents here. Then one of the miners came to the tent and asked TPC personnel if they had found any information. "Everyone, could you please be patient for a while longer? We are already working hard to search." At this moment, a person walked out of the tent and quickly comforted the group of miners. "There must be no life left, everyone has been turned into stones by Gakuma," suddenly a miner in the crowd said with a very low spirit. "Gakuma." The TPC staff looked at the miner in confusion. "What are you doing?" Just as the staff was about to ask the miner about the situation with Gakuma, the director in charge of the miners over here walked over, cleared the surrounding crowd, and at the same time demanded, "Why do you still have time to talk nonsense here? Hurry up and get to work. May I ask what's going on with Gakuma?" However, the TPC personnel who came to investigate this matter ignored the director's somewhat angry expression and directly asked him. "There lives a Gakuma who can produce stones on this island of Jiuliang." And the miner didn't wait for a response from the director before he directly revealed the matter. "Don't talk nonsense." The director interrupted the miner's words and turned to look at the TPC personnel, snorting, "I don't know who called you here, it's not related to the Earth Peace United Organization." After speaking, the director turned his gaze to the group of miners under his command and rebuked, "You guys are really good. If you have anything to talk about, just talk about Gakuma and pretend to be mischievous. However, as soon as these words were spoken, the miners became anxious, and a group of people began to shout, "I said the director, there really is. What's there, ah? You big-headed ghost, why don't you go to work?" The director was furious when he saw this posture. These guys really turned around and dared to shout at him collectively, directly scolding them. "There really is Gakuma." Someone still said unwillingly, but seeing the unhappy expression on their head's face, they immediately dared not speak. The director couldn't help but snort coldly at this and then walked away. Before leaving, he urged them to go to work as soon as possible. Everyone looked at each other and didn't immediately go to work. Instead, they told the TPC personnel about the legend of Jiuliang Island. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. The Daily Crash of EP1-10, for collection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. The Daily Crash of EP1-10, for collection. After learning about the causes and consequences of the incident, TPC personnel reported it to Director A, who rushed over from headquarters on the spot. Since he already knew what the other person was, Director A had a solution and directly sent someone to bury a powerful explosive not far from the cave, waiting for the monster to appear and blow him upside down. And Director A is commanding a technician to detect the life response of the monster. Sure enough, a powerful life energy response was captured on the computer in no time, and the opponent was still moving towards the ground. "You're out." Everyone inside the tent saw the reaction screen displayed on the computer. Director A quickly walked out of the tent and looked up at the back of the tent. After a wave of earth and mountain shaking, there was a sudden rolling of soil and rock on the ground, and then Gakuma's massive body appeared in front of everyone. "Good guy, blow it up," Director A ordered directly, with no signs of panic on his face. "Understood." A staff member quickly took out the device for detonating explosives from the tent, and when Gakuma moved to the location where the explosives were buried, he directly pressed the detonating device. With a loud rumble. At the moment of pressing the detonation device, the explosion was deafening, and the thick smoke and dust directly covered Gakuma's huge body. Success. The crowd couldn't help but excitedly clap their palms. They didn't expect to kill such a huge monster so easily, it was really no difficulty at all. However, according to the eternal law of no harm with smoke, they were still too happy. Before the excitement on their faces could fade, they saw that after the smoke had dissipated, Gakuma's oppressive, massive body was revealed. Gakuma opened his huge mouth and let out a low growl, and his gaze immediately turned to the small group of humans on the ground. Director A's face changed slightly upon seeing this, and he quickly returned to the tent, then contacted Victory Team through a communicator. The Victory Team heard the order and a monster appeared on Jiuliang Island. They immediately set off. Director A first gave orders to the captain of the Victory Team, Zhu Jianhui, and then gave orders to the remaining Horai and others. "Monsters have appeared again, is it Golzan who escaped last time?" Xinchen looked at Horai and Lina beside him. However, before they could speculate more, the notice from Captain Jia Hui was conveyed. "It's not that Golzan has reappeared, but a new monster has appeared." "New monster, good guy, this time let the monster taste our Victory Team's new weapon." After getting on the Fian-2 plane, Horai, Xinchen, and Dagu couldn't help but feel a little excited. Vice Captain Zhongfang and Lina, on the other hand, piloted the Fian No. 1 aircraft and set off first. At the same time, after notifying the Victory Team, Director A was protected in the middle by everyone and was fleeing the scene. But how could they possibly run past the monster? They were soon caught up, and the shadow of Gakuma's massive body directly enveloped them. As they were about to be stomped on by Gakuma, an unexpected situation occurred. Fian No. 1 aircraft flew into the sky and directly attacked Gakuma, rescuing Director A and his team from Gakuma's feet. Everyone took advantage of this opportunity to help Director A quickly leave under Gakuma. It's the Fian of Victory team, they're here. After everyone escaped from Xingtian, they finally looked at Fian-1 hovering in the sky, feeling very fortunate. If Victory team came a second later, they, including Director Zay, would probably die tragically at the feet of the monster. Thinking about the scene of being trampled by the monster and turning into flesh and mud, everyone couldn't help but shiver. The first aircraft circled in the sky and then flew over Gakuma's head, shooting several rays that directly hit Gakuma's stone-like back. However, the attack effect disappointed everyone, and Gakuma did not suffer any damage at all. Despite being attacked a few times, it felt like tickling herself a few times, but Gakuma was angry. This seemingly weak thing flew around its head like a fly, making it very unhappy. Then, as soon as the beam of light shot out from the corner of Gakuma's head, it only ran towards Fian-1 above. However, it was Lina, the ace pilot, who narrowly avoided the beam of light from Gakuma. But the good times didn't last long. Gakuma repeatedly emitted beams of light, even Lina, the ace pilot, couldn't resist. In no time, a dragon from Gakuma lifted its head and hit the tail of the plane. Then, the plane emitted smoke and made a long scratch on the ground. Inside the Fian aircraft, the system emitted a series of alarm sounds. Fortunately, the deputy captain Zhongfang did not become unconscious due to the friction and collision between the plane and the ground. He quickly woke up the unconscious Lina and helped each other off the plane. After Zhongfang and Lina left the plane, the huge shadow of Gakuma shrouded them. Lina and her partner were already injured, and a strong sense of crisis struck, causing them to accidentally fall to the ground. And at this moment, Gakuma's huge foot suddenly fell down, and Zhongfang let out a loud cry. As the deputy captain, he instinctively used his body to block Lina's body. Shio shio shio. At this moment, 3 rays suddenly hit Gakuma, igniting a burst of sparks that directly interrupted the foot that Gakuma was about to fall. Zhongfang quickly turned his head and exclaimed in surprise, "It's Flight 2, let's go." Helping Lina up with force, Zhongfang and his companions quickly left Gakuma's attack range with a limp. And Director Zay, who has been holding a heart, couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when he saw this scene. If a vice captain and an ace pilot of the Victory team had an accident as a result, it would be a huge loss for their TPC. "Vice Captain, are you okay?" Dagu and Horai appeared on the communicator between Lina and Zhongfang, with a concerned expression on their faces. Especially Dagu, seeing Lina's current disheveled appearance, couldn't help but want to appear by her side immediately. "We're fine, you guys should deal with the monster in front of us first." Zhongfang gasped for breath, but still waved his hand, indicating that he was not in any big trouble. "Okay, Dagu, then let the monster taste the power of our super powerful light." After turning off the communication, Horai said to Dagu, who was responsible for the attack of the second machine. "Okay, no problem." End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Is late again, for collection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 is late again, for collection, ultra strong light, emission. Dagu remembered the damage Lina had suffered and without hesitation pressed the emission button of the ultra strong light towards Gakuma. Gakuma couldn't dodge at all and was immediately hit by super powerful light. Boom boom. As Gakuma was hit, its body exploded with a loud bang on the spot, killing the monster with just one strike. The attack of Fian-2 was terrifying. Yeah. Inside the second aircraft, several people from Horai fiercely attacked each other, all very happy. They didn't expect that one strike would kill the monster, which is something they are very proud of. Their humans have no room for resistance against the monster anymore. After a while, a few people from Horai landed the second aircraft on the ground and met with Director Zay and Rina Zhongfang. "In just a few days, it's amazing that we can transform it so well." Director Zay couldn't help but praise the 6 members of the Victory team present. "But if monsters appear all over the world in the future, the situation will be serious," Zhongfang interjected in a timely manner. Director Zay also nodded and said, I plan to immediately notify all TPC branches to carry out the renovation after returning to headquarters. Before that, if anything happens, let the victorious team handle it, said Xinchen, holding his helmet with confidence on his face. But it's just a moment, it's not satisfying. I really want to fight the monster again. Ha ha ha. Horai looked very unsatisfied, making everyone present burst into laughter. Buzzing, before their laughter could subside, the ground suddenly began to vibrate without warning. What's the situation? Is it an earthquake? Xinchen quickly stood firm. Is it a landslide? This guy, Horai, was a bit disoriented and even thought about the aspect of a landslide. However, Dagu suddenly felt a wave of restlessness and his eyes looked around, then suddenly turned to the direction where Fian No. 2 aircraft was parked. Roaming and rumbling, sure enough, under the gaze of Dagu, not far from Unit 2, a monster suddenly rushed out of the ground, and its head had an extra horn than the one just now, with 2 horns. There's more than one monster, it's the one with 2 horns. Director Zay suddenly remembered the report from his subordinates not long ago. He thought the miners had never really seen Kakuma, but now it seems that what the miners said is true. At this moment, Horai didn't know what to say, and he was just having a mouth-watering experience. He never expected that a monster would actually emerge. Oh my, his small and insightful mouth has never been lit up before. I really want to give myself a big mouth. As the monster approached them, the members of the victory team wanted to drive the second plane again to deal with the monster. However, the position where the second plane was parked was too close to the monster, and they had no chance of boarding the second plane. Helplessly, everyone had to disperse and flee, heading in any direction, and the scene suddenly fell into chaos. Just as everyone was in a panic, Dagu followed the crowd and, taking advantage of everyone's eagerness to escape, quietly arrived in a corner and took out the spark prism from his arms. Dagu lifted the divine light stick into the sky and pressed it directly. Dagu did not shout Diga, but silently completed the operation. After a dazzling light flickered to the extreme, people who were hurriedly fleeing realized that a giant with 3 colors of red, purple, and silver appeared in front of the monster, blocking its progress. Giant! Look! It's the giant who's coming to save us. Lena quickly patted the new city next to her, her expression somewhat excited. Lena team member, I can see it, Xinchen said as he approached and enlarged his face in front of Lena, widening his eyes. Lena regained her composure and awkwardly withdrew her hand, but soon her attention returned to the monster's position. After Dagu transformed into Dijia, he made a sudden jump towards Kakuma and rushed towards him, then slashed his hand. Bang! An extremely heavy muffled sound rang out, and Diga struck a knife at Gakuma's forehead, colliding and producing a dazzling spark. Gakuma let out a low growl of pain, and his body involuntarily took a few steps back. Upon seeing this, Dijia needed to take the opportunity and beat the water dog, but this time, Gakuma would not let him go as he pleased. The 2 sharp corners on the head flickered and immediately emitted a destructive light. Dijia was caught off guard and directly received the blow. After realizing it, he covered his chest with both hands and didn't forget to approach Gakuma. Contrary to Gakuma's light, Diga impulsively interrupted Gakuma's attack. Exactly. Dijia's powerful and heavy punch hit Gakuma's incredibly hard back, smashing out countless sparks. Although the hardest defense of Gakuma was its back, it couldn't help but scream in pain when it was hit hard. Then, a wild dragon lifted its head and directly pushed Dijia upside down, hitting a rockery. This hit made the earth tremble violently several times, splashing countless dust. Gakuma was not foolish either. At this moment, the 2 corners on his head flickered again, and soon a purple beam of light shot out. Upon seeing this, Diga, who had just stood firm, immediately propped his hands on the ground and dodged the petrified beam. If he were hit by this petrified beam, it would not be good. Seeing that the petrified beam did not work, Gakuma changed his attack mode and saw the armor of his forelimbs suddenly double before sprinting towards Diga. Wow! Gakuma first slapped his paw on Diga's chest, and then a paw slashed fiercely across Diga's chest, splashing sparks with a loud splash. Digia was temporarily incapacitated by this series of attacks, and upon seeing this, Gakuma couldn't help but let out a cry. The two sharp corners on his head suddenly changed from vertical to horizontal, and he charged straight at Digia. Unexpectedly, Digia's right leg was hit by Gakuma's horns, causing countless sparks to sprout up, and now Digia was injured even more. Digia couldn't help but half fall to the ground, his chest heaving violently, and his timer also flickered. This was a really bad situation, and Gakuma's attacks came one after another, making it impossible to resist silence for him. Are the giants going to lose? Everyone couldn't help but start worrying when they saw this scene. At the same time, in a corner that no one had noticed, a circular black star pattern appeared and Hongling walked out of it. Damn it! It's late again. P.S. Can dads invest in this book? End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Melba appears again, seeking recommended votes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Melba appears again, seeking recommended votes. Damn it. It's late again. When Hongling arrived at the scene of the battle between Digia and Gakuma and saw that Digia was about to be attacked again, she couldn't help but curse. Hurry up and down, but still missed a Gakuma, which made Hongling feel a bit tempted to curse. This is just a card. However, no one knew Red Ling's feelings. After a brief collision, Gakuma quickly turned around and the corners of her head flickered again, instantly shooting out a petrified beam of light. Unexpectedly, when Digia was caught off guard, his legs were directly hit by the petrification beam, and his lower body began to petrify at a visible speed to the naked eye. Unable to move his thighs, Diga struggled fiercely but still had little effect. Everyone who saw this scene immediately became anxious. Is the giant really going to lose? But the giant has just recovered from the statue and hasn't been long. Is it possible that the giant will once again become a statue? However, as is well known, in general, when all Ultraman's chests start flashing red lights, that is when the Ultraman counterattacks. Sure enough, at this moment, a flash of light flashed across Digia's eyebrows, and he immediately raised his hands to the center of his eyebrows, vigorously swiping downwards. Digia immediately transformed into a powerful red form. The trend of spreading up into a stone-like form was suddenly broken by Diga's transformation, and he was directly restored to his free form. Once again in his combat position, Diga suddenly flipped over and jumped, and in the blink of an eye, he came behind Gakuma and grabbed her body. Then, under the gaze of those watching all these battles, Diga forcefully lifted Gakuma up with both hands and fiercely smashed him to the ground. After shaking the mountains in a battlefield, Diga took advantage of the victory to pursue and spread his stance in place, using the powerful form of his ultimate move. Dilahum Light Flow, exactly. The skill was instantly fired and hit Gakuma in the blink of an eye, but there was no unexpected result. Gakuma's entire body exploded on the spot. At this moment, Hongling, who had been watching the battle in a corner, took out a black ring and aimed it at the location where Gakuma exploded. Without anyone noticing, the location where Gakuma exploded silently condensed small black light particles that were invisible to the naked eye, slowly converging towards the location of Hongling. In no time, black light particles passed through the ring and condensed into a card. Staring at the newly acquired card sandwiched between her fingertips for a while, Hongling's attention turned to Diga's position again. Putting away the Gakuma card, Hongling took out the Melba card she had recently obtained from her waist and plunged into the circle. Melba. Dark Entity. The echoing sound rang out again, and the Melba card in the circle instantly turned into a black beam of light, shining not far from Diga, who was about to fly into the sky. Everyone, look. What's that? Horai suddenly pointed towards the sky and shouted loudly. This abnormal phenomenon is too conspicuous. Although the light is black, the members of the winning team present and some people have noticed the sudden appearance of the black light. And with both hands raised above his head, Dagu, who wanted to fly into the sky, suddenly turned around and looked at the spot where the black beam of light shone. Ha! Only a sharp scream, like nails scratching on glass, was heard, and the uncomfortable light dissipated. What was exposed to everyone was the huge and oppressive body of Melba. What? This shocked everyone in the victory team, even Captain Zhu Jianhui, who was far away at the Far East headquarters base, saw this scene through satellite and Ting suddenly stood up from his seat with a loud cry. Yes. Melba. Why does Melba appear here? Where did it come from? In the distance, Lina and Deputy Captain Zhongfang both looked incredulous. On the other hand, after solidifying Melba, Hongling put away the circular ring, and suddenly her eyes turned into a pitch-black color, even the whites of her eyes were covered, with faint black rays emanating. Up, Melba. Red Ling's thoughts moved, and soon everyone saw the crimson eyes of Melba that had just appeared, suddenly flashing with 2 red rays of light, and the target was Dagu. Melba's light speed was very fast, but in the blink of an eye, he arrived at Dagu, who didn't have time to defend, and then Dagu was hit in the chest by 2 rays. Zila. Suddenly, sparks splattered in front of Dagu's chest, and he was hit by these 2 rays of light, causing his body to crash to the ground and shaking up countless dust. Dee-dee-dong, dee-dee-dong. The timer on Dagu's chest flickered rapidly like a talisman, constantly flashing. Oh no! Seeing the terrible situation of the giant, the victorious team hiding behind the rock suddenly clenched their fists and hammered the covering stone, but soon regained consciousness and covered their fists, gasping for breath. If it were in normal times, the other victorious team members would definitely mock him wildly, but now no one has that mood, all looking solemnly at the giant's unfavorable situation. Dee-dee-dong, dee-dee-dong. The timer on Dagu's chest had already reached the point of flashing every second. Melba, give Dagu the final blow. Hongling directly ordered Melba that the current Dagu was just a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Although she said she shouldn't have dealt with Dagu, she still wanted to give it a try and see if Dagu could become her card. Ha! Upon receiving the command, Melba let out a scream, his wings spread out directly behind him, and his entire body left the ground. He flew low to reach Dagu, and his sharp mouth aimed at the crumbling Dagu, fiercely chiseling down. Suddenly, Dagu let out a painful cry and fell to the ground, with countless sparks sprouting from his shoulders. However, if the victorious team looked closely, they would find that the sparks sprouting from Dagu's shoulders were mixed with some small light particles. The current Dagu is at the end of his rope, and he can't resist at all. It has been almost 3 full minutes since Dagu transformed into Dagu. Melba quickly turned around, folded his wings, landed next to Dagu, and then stomped down hard with 1 foot. Dagu, who was trampled on by Melba on her chest, tightly grasped her ankles with both hands, trying to break open her soles but feeling powerless. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Turning Dagu into light. Seeking recommended votes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Turning Dagu into light. Seeking recommended votes, Melba's foot rubbed back and forth fiercely against Dagu's chest before retracting the foot and kicking Dagu away with a single kick. Taking advantage of the gap where Dagu fell to the ground, Melba suddenly lifted his hands in place and pressed them against his chest, immediately converging a red energy ball. Originally, Melba did not have this skill, but after being dark enhanced by the black circle, not only did he become more powerful, but he also added this new skill. Bang! The energy ball condensed in Melba's chest turned into a destructive light, shooting straight and fiercely towards Dagu, who had just struggled to stand up. Is the giant about to be knocked down? Zhongfang looked at this scene with a heavy heart and clenched his fist, feeling very unwilling. And Lina couldn't bear to see the giant being defeated by Melba like this. At the moment Melba's attack shot, she closed her eyes and didn't dare to watch the scene of the giant being defeated happen. Even Hongling in the corner couldn't help but hold her breath. Whether to play an extra card or return in vain depends on the next moment. What? However, the following scene surprised Hongling a bit, as Dijia was not hit by Melba's attack. I saw that in a powerful form, Diga's arms protected his chest, providing perfect defense, and then Melba's destructive light was blocked by Diga. Surprisingly, there is still room for strength. Looking at Dijia, who was still struggling to support her, Hongling was even more surprised. Is this the so-called rhythm of a comeback? However, that was not the case. After supporting for a few seconds, the timer that was originally flashing rapidly on Diga's chest suddenly dimmed and lost its radiance. Roaming and rumbling, immediately after, Melba's destructive light unexpectedly passed through Dijia's body and exploded onto the mountain behind him, shattering the mountain to the ground. Hongling blinked her eyes. Is this her body being pierced by light? However, in the next moment, Diga directly transformed into small light particles, drifting away in place on the spot, not being penetrated by Melba's destructive light. Has the giant disappeared? The light particles that Diga transformed into were not very obvious during the day, and everyone only saw Diga suddenly disappear at the last moment. However, the victorious team did not notice, but Hongling was different from ordinary people. She could clearly see the process of Dijia suddenly turning into light particles and dispersing them. She quickly took out the black ring hanging from her waist. Why didn't she react? But after a full 10 seconds, Hongling aimed the ring in the direction of Dijia's dissipation for so long, but there was no reaction at all. She didn't absorb those light particles and turn them into cards as usual. Damn it, even giants are not opponents of monsters. Xinqing looked at Melba tightly, as if trying to kill him with his gaze. New city team members, Horai team members, even giants have been knocked down by Melba now, and we can only rely on our human strength. Zhongfang suddenly looked at the three Lina people beside him with a serious expression. Wait a moment, I'll go out and attract the attention of the monster, and then you three will take the opportunity to board the second plane. Do you understand? What? But the deputy commander's actions are very dangerous. It's precisely because of the danger that I have to do this. Before Lina could finish speaking, she was interrupted by Zhongfang's hand and said, "All right, let's act like this. This is an order." Seeing Zhongfang looking at them with an undeniable tone, Lina and the three of them opened their mouths, but at this moment they didn't know what to say. Speaking of which, it may seem like a long time has passed since the appearance of Melba and the downfall of Diga, but it only took more than 30 seconds. And when they appeared in Dijia, they instinctively watched the battle together, because the Flying Swallow 2 plane was not far from the monster, and they couldn't go over and drive the second plane to help Dijia. They were afraid that they would be affected by the battle before they could reach the vicinity of the second plane. However, just as they were preparing to take action, they turned Diga into light and dissipated. However, Melba remained motionless and showed no signs of attacking humanity. "Look, why isn't the monster moving?" Horai said in confusion. "Be careful of fraud." Zhongfang was cautious, reminding the team members that there may be fraud. "I'm sorry, my childhood idol, Melba, come back." As the victory team looked at Melba on guard, Red Ling turned her hand towards him, and Melba instantly turned into a card and returned to Red Ling's hand. Speaking of which, Dagu and Dijia were still her childhood idols. Now, she would even scatter her idols like light particles for an Ultraman card. What a sin! And the last time I saw Dagu near the pyramid, due to some nervousness at that time, I didn't pay attention to Dagu. Otherwise, she might have come forward to chat with her childhood idol no matter what. "I am Zhongfang, call headquarters, call headquarters." Zhongfang took out the communicator from his waist and contacted Zhu Jianhui, who was stationed at the base. "This is the headquarters base, please speak. Please immediately mobilize the satellite to detect the situation here on Jiuliang Island. The monster, Melba, suddenly disappeared, and see if the satellite can detect it." "Understood." In fact, the intermediary Hui at the headquarters has been paying attention to the situation on Jiuliang Island. Before the Zhongfang could contact her, she had already instructed Yerue to start exploring. Then, she looked to Yerue on the side and asked, "Has the energy of the monster on Jiuliang Island been detected?" There has been no energy response yet, but just as Melba disappeared, the system captured an extremely weak energy response. Upon hearing this, Zhu Jianhui quickly asked, "Is there anything unusual? I can't resolve it yet." Zhu Jianhui sat down on the seat, her hands subconsciously clasped together, as if praying. And Zhongfang and others on Jiuliang Island naturally received this news, and still felt a bit unwilling in their hearts. Where's Dagu? Where have Dagu's team members gone? He looked around the team members, but at this moment, Zhongfang realized that Dagu was not here. He quickly looked at the remaining team members. The other team members looked at each other, only then did they realize something was wrong. Why is Dagu not here? The situation was a bit chaotic just now, and Dagu didn't know where he went, Horai recalled for a moment and said. However, in no time, they discovered the unconscious Dagu not far from the battle between the giant and the monster just now. End of this chapter.